Welcome back to Overdrive, Hour 2 on TSN 1050 and the iHeartRadio app. My name is Brandon Dunlop. Happy to be in the Hayes chair. Noodles and O-Dog and Hazy B, Brian Hayes are enjoying the summer, doing something somewhere, but not with each other because they don't like to socialize outside of this place.
That's what we hear.
That's what people say a lot, which must mean it's true. Right, Dave Feschuk? Do you hang out with your colleagues a lot? You and Doug Smith going for pops every so often? You're both so busy. You're not in the same venue as much anymore.
It's a privilege when I get to hang out with Smitty. We have a lot of fun together. Sometimes after a game, we might retire to an establishment and enjoy a cold beverage. But, yeah, you're right. Smitty's a workhorse, and we're always kind of in different places most of the time.
Yeah. Busy guy. Blue Jays fans are hoping that the Blue Jays are in a different place after this game set, and it's a better place than they are right now heading into Baltimore. 3 games with your 3 strongest arms, or certainly the arms you'd want in this, what feels like, it's not a must-win series, I guess, but it is in a lot of ways. This is the most important series of the season right now.
Yeah.
So you can't look at it any other way. It's salvageable if you've taken one, great, because you've only taken 2 of 10 from them so far this season. But you got to take some games off of the better teams, and the Orioles are the best team in this division.
Yeah, I mean it's disgraceful that you're 2-8 against these guys. You got to make some inroads on that record. And I guess look, it's coming out of Baltimore now that Vladdy Guerrero Jr. will be playing tonight, even though obviously he left the Blue Jays last game against Cincinnati with that middle finger discomfort, I believe it was termed.
We were talking about should they load management him if he got some discomfort.
So he will be playing tonight, batting fourth, playing first base for the Blue Jays. So he was day-to-day, according to John Schneider, but he will play today. So I guess that's a good sign, or maybe it's a bad sign if you were of the mind, like I think you were, that maybe this is not a bad time to sit this guy down and get his legs under him for the stretch run.
I am of that mind, but at the same time, if he strikes me as someone that if he hits well against Baltimore, I think he corrects so many of these issues.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Being at his best or near it against the best fuels a guy. And, Grayson Rodriguez is on the hill. He's not one of their top 3 arms right now, Baltimore. Someone that could give them some fits, perhaps, but he's got an ERA of 5.5 right now. He's had a couple actually poor starts heading into this. So maybe the Jays, take advantage of it tonight. You can only face what's in front of you, but with Kikuchi on the mound, I think they put themselves in a good position.
Yeah. Hey, man, it's now or never. If you had any illusions about winning the East, you're going to have to win these next 3.
Do you think that there's illusions of still winning the East, though?
Wow. I mean, you'd like to think you could. Look, I mean, if the best case scenario is you start getting hot, which you really haven't been all year, this John Angelos nonsense with the Baltimore Orioles owner mouthing off about needing to raise ticket prices, considerably to pay for all the young talent that's hitting it big in the majors, even though they got a $70 million payroll against the Jays' $210 million payroll. That's the other thing. Your payroll's 3 times these guys, and you've won 2 out of 10 against them. It's about time you probably win a couple more.
This is the frustrating part, right? The Blue Jays are looking at the Orioles in a position that they expect it to be, with their payroll, with their roster, with their pitching staff, with the expectation for this season, the momentum from last season. They're supposed to be in this spot. That's, I think, the feeling. And maybe it got in the way of their bouts against Baltimore earlier in the season, which is why they're 2-8. So they got an opportunity to turn that around this week. Well, let's change things up here on Overdrive, talk a little hockey, bring in someone who knows all about dealing with the ownership groups. And I'd love to see if he's had dealt with any ownership groups similar to the Orioles. Dave Poulin on the line. Dave, this is a pleasure, my friend. This is my first time getting the chance to chat with you.
It is, Brendan. Good to chat with you and Dave. Happy mid-August, almost ramp-up time for the hockey guys.
Oh, that it is.
And well, it feels like it's almost the exact same for me now as when I was a player. So now, guys are starting to filter back into town, and guys are skating, and you're sizing guys up and wonder who's been doing what. And it's a little bit different from when I played, and that everybody does everything now in the summer. It wasn't always the case. But it's starting to get that feeling a little bit. And I was thrown into full hockey mode on the weekend, guys. I was down in Philly for their 10th or 9th annual Flyers alumni fantasy camp.
Ooh.
And
wow.
It was really fun. So this is the third time I've gone, and a nice group from a staff standpoint. John LeClaire was there, Mark Recchi, Keith Jones, the new president. Danny Briere did stop by. Brad Marsh was there. Bob Kelly and Joe Watson from the old Broad Street Bullies were present. Really nice group, but 80 skaters from all over North America. And I almost wish you could get current players and see what these guys remember about our careers. So I'm talking to guys who are reliving games that I played in 85 and 87, like by plays, and said, you remember that time you crossed the blue line? And I'm like, dude, I don't even remember. I don't even remember that year. Forget that specific game. But the passion of this group, and when I say from all over North America, small towns in Canada, all over Texas, Colorado, Arizona, who moved out there now but grew up as Flyer fans, or people who've never lived in Philadelphia. There was a father-son tandem from Rochester, and I asked the son, who was 31 years old, it was his graduation gift 9 years ago, and it kept coming.
Wow.
And I said, so why the Flyers? Did you ever live in Philly? Did your dad ever live in Philly? And he laughed. He said, no, my dad was a big-time front runner in the 70s. So I cheer for the Miami Dolphins, the Cincinnati Reds, the Philadelphia Flyers. And he said, but really a fun weekend, 3 days of telling a lot of stories and reliving memories, but the passion of these fans, guys. And it's the same way today. I mean, if today's player could understand what, 30 years from now they're going to hear about their game today, they'd be shocked.
That's a really good point. I love that you had a great weekend. I've not done the actual team fantasy camp quite like that, but I've done a couple of Eric Lindros charity tournaments for Easter Seals, and that's a lot of fun, seeing the guys get together. I played with Billy Smith 1 year, had Dennis Marouk a couple of times. Dennis Marouk refuses to share the ice with me because I can't receive a pass from him. Mind you, you can just take it yourself then, Dennis. You don't gotta stiff me on the next line. But no, that's always a lot of fun. And you're right about it being different and an experience that these current players haven't had yet. And I think it would perhaps alter their perspective a little bit, but also it would be a great experience for them to have and a connection that they could have as actual players. I can't name too many guys I think that would sign up for it right away, but if it was perhaps contractually obligated.
Well, part of the attraction for me is I only get on the ice for like a half an hour.
That's it.
One little practice with the guys, and that's it. So we just end up coaching, but it's a lot of fun. It brought back some great memories, and I still have a lot of connections down in that area. And so that sort of revamps your hockey thoughts when everybody's asking me about my thoughts on different teams around from where they live now or who they're, who they follow closely. And so it's sort of ramped up my whole hockey mindset over the weekend as to what's ahead.
I guess so. This is your analyst preseason. That's it. Everyone's got
That's right.
Some guys watch thousands of hours worth of film. Some guys can go out and tell stories at a fantasy camp. Poulin, you got it pretty good, my friend.
Exactly.
All right,
exactly.
So now I got to get your take on the news of the day. Brandon Hagel and the Lightning, 8-year extension, $6.5 million AAV. Is it an overpay? You think it's good value? He's 24. He scored 30 last season. Like, to me, it's the 8 years I have a bit more of a problem with. But the money here, this is a good term for them.
Well, it's a very good term, but I think, Brendan, if you factor in, they got him for 2 full years at 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
And because he'll have another year at 1.5 before this deal kicks in. And so now you're lowering the AV to 5.5, a little bit under that, actually. And he's produced for them. He came in the year they won the Cup. He's had a very good year last year. And so they get another year at 1.5 before that 6.5 kicks in. So when you factor all those things in, I think it is good. It's part of the next group of Tampa. And everybody sort of wants to dismiss Tampa with the young teams coming up, Ottawa and Buffalo principally, maybe a little Detroit and, Montreal a few years behind, everybody wants to figure out who's coming out of the Atlantic, like who's not going to make it. And, there's still some pretty good teams left. And people want to dismiss Tampa because they lost in the first round last year to the Leafs. I don't think this is a team that you should dismiss at all. And if you look at the ages of some of their key guys, I mean, Kucherov's only 30. You've got Stammer and Hedman, who are 33 and 32. But then it drops off nicely. I mean, Braden Point is 27. Cirelli's 26. Chernak's 26. You got a bunch of guys. Sergachev's only 25. And the key guy of all is between the pipes, and Vasilevsky's 29 years old. So I think with what they went through in the last 3 years, the compressed seasons, going to the finals 3 times, and, I went twice in 3 years, and what it takes out of you is remarkable. And then they had it on the compressed, on the bubble, on the shortened season, so theirs wasn't even normal. But physically and mentally, it really beats you up. And I think what most people should fear in the Atlantic is that Tampa Bay's had a full, long summer, and they're healthy. So I don't think it's an overpay. I think it fits. He's proven that he can plug in with top-line players. And there's a difference between being a top-line player and being able to support a top-line player. Because there's still only one puck out there. And so if you've got 2 guys on a line and you can plug a Hagel in who can produce at a nice level and not demand the puck or command the puck all the time, that's an important piece. And I don't think 6.5 and the way I average it down from there is too high a price to pay.
Well, speaking of supporting top players, Pooley, we were just having a conversation about Connor Bedard, specifically around our expectations for him. We know the talent. We saw him dominate the World Juniors and, sell out buildings across the Western Hockey League. We know he can score goals, but, the FanDuel over-under on his goal total next year, Pooley, is 31.5. And Brendan and I were kind of split on, I was taking the over, he's taking the under, and his logic is there's not a lot around him. Like, it's going to be tough for him to, go onto this Chicago Blackhawks team that's been a bottom feeder in the NHL and just carry the load himself. How do you see that?
I'm taking the over, and I think this kid is going to score goals, and I'm going to, he is so talented, and I am so careful about the word generational because for a while there, it seemed we were tossing that word around every year, and then I would argue that if you do it every year, it's actually called an annual player. It's not called a generational player.
Good one, Pooley. I like that.
It's the truth, though, right? Because we want to crown these kids as generational players because we had a couple in a row and that we thought were, and they've proven to be pretty good players in McDavid and Matthews. But past that, there can't be one every year, or we lose the true definition of the term. And this kid is special, guys. He's going to score at a different level. And I have the opportunity to do the U8 teams. I do some of it off tube, and I get to see these kids when they're young and get to watch them develop. And there's a player who isn't in this class, but a lot of people question because of his stature, and that was Cole Caulfield, and whether he'd score in the National Hockey League. And from a pure goal-scoring standpoint, Cole Caulfield's one of the best I've seen coming up through the ranks. Just the ability to put the puck in the net from wherever he is on the ice, to use space, to get to open areas. And I think that's what it is with Bedard. But I think what Bedard does that's different from Caulfield is he carries the puck better. He'll still get to open spots. And don't forget, we can dismiss the talent around him, but next year in Chicago, he will be playing with the best passers he's ever played with.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And, you think about it, maybe a Tyler Johnson, a Taylor Hall, who might fit in there. They've got a couple of young kids coming up that I think are going to be good players for them, who are still in the minors. But we may see this year, the Lucas Reichel kid's a really talented guy. And so maybe you'll see some of those kids plug in, but he's never had a Taylor Hall to pass him the puck or a Tyler Johnson to pass him the puck or, they've got some veterans. They brought in a couple of veterans, and I think of Nick Foligno and Corey Perry more as showing him how to be a pro than playing with him on the ice. But I think I would because they're still going to have a power play, guys. and you've still got Seth Jones on the back end running the power play. So I like the over because someone on the Chicago Blackhawks is going to score, and there's a pretty good chance if someone does that it's going to be Connor Bedard.
Very well said, Poulin. I guess I'm wrong then. Maybe I should think twice about placing that bet in the over-under, my friend. Yep, you're absolutely right. That's why you are the expert.
Don't overrate that. It's still August.
It is. Well, we'll have the conversation again in September, hopefully. Let me back here, and we'll see where things are a little closer to the season. We're talking with Dave Poulin on the Maple Toyota Hotline. What kind of conversations are the Leafs having around Matthews and Nylander right now, you think? Is there real concern, actually, in that building?
I think Brad Treliving has done a great job of quieting that down. I really do. And I think, he talked about it before July 1st. July 1st was the massive day that swung the pendulum in the players' favor. But that being said, the way it works is that when the clock strikes midnight, they get their no trade clause and their no move clause. So unless you're putting ink to paper at midnight, there's no way to avoid that. And so it seems to have been such a focal point of that date. But they've got the clauses now, and they gain that much more control. But I think Brad Treliving did a great job of quieting everything down and saying, this isn't going to be done on July 1st. And the simultaneousness of those two things happening, I mean, they refute each other, right? It's like you can't do it. You can't get to that date. You have to get to the date to sign them. But the minute you hit that date, they gain the clauses. And, they're in powerful seats. I mean, flat out. They're both going into their final year. They both produced at an extremely high level. And we'll see how it shakes out. And I think there's a couple of pretty good examples in Nathan MacKinnon. And I was asked at one point to come up with a couple of concrete examples of guys that went past their July 1st recently. Well, Nathan MacKinnon and David Pastrnak both went by it, right? And McKinnon went into September and Pastrnak went till March. But I immediately came up with those dates, but it was a really funny conversation because I'd gone to the grocery store that day and I was supposed to get 4 things and I forgot 2 of them. But the minute I was asked when a player signed a contract after July 1st, I could remember that Pastrnak was March and McKinnon was September, but I just couldn't remember those other 2 things at the grocery store.
The avocados are not as important, Dave. That's what it is. That shows
you where my mind is, though, Brendan. You're always thinking about this. You're always thinking of light cases because you want those. If you're the Leafs, you want the light cases because they worked out in favor of the team. And if you're the player, it does take a lot of pressure off to say, okay, this doesn't have to be done on July 1st. But those guys are in powerful seats. They simply are, with UFA looming, and they're different from each other. They get lumped together because of the core 4 and how they've been tightly grouped since they came into the league. But they're very different cases. They'll be handled differently. Don't be surprised if one is with term and one is with shorter term. Don't be surprised, I think by anything that happens. So once again, I go back to a veteran general manager who came in and I think was able to quiet it down nicely.
Yeah, I think that's important, Pooley, what you just said about these guys being different players in very different circumstances, even though they're both seeking contract extensions, because clearly one's more important than the other. And Matthews is the one that we all assume is going to get done. But as much as Tree Living has quieted it to this point, I mean, we're sitting here on August 22nd, pretty quiet time of the year in town, and not a lot is getting done around the sports world, although Julian Breezebrough was busy today and got Hagel signed. It will get louder, Pooley, and I'm wondering, what do you think, Matthews' tolerance for that volume would be? How much do you think he would be, either because we saw Mitch Marner, take it hard when he wasn't signed way back. How do you think Matthews would react to that? And how do you think Tree Living, his first time in, a market this size, will be Calgary's no cow town, even though they call it that. How do you think both those two would react to the potential firestorm if this thing isn't done and it drags into a Pastrnak situation a la March?
That's a really hard question, Dave, because I'm not sure we know that much about Auston Matthews.
Yeah.
And by his choice. I mean, with Nylander, we assume he's going to be laissez-faire, right? Like he's going to be He's simply not going to be concerned about it.
No.
He's going to do what Willie Nylander does. But, you're around that team a lot. You're in the locker room. You're around that team a lot. And, from the group that that are around him on an everyday basis, do you know anyone that knows him really well?
No.
No. And that's by his choice. And so I think that's why that question is so challenging to answer. And, we just don't. And I've talked to people that have known him longer than we have, and they don't know him that well. He's just someone that chooses to remove himself from that everyday, and I can't even, come close to discussing what it was like with my beat writers when I played, because it was a different day and age. And we had some veteran guys in Philly, Jay Greenberg, who's left us far too early, and Al Morganti, and then in Boston it was Kevin Paul DuPont and Steve Harris, another guy we lost too early, and guys like that who you had full relationships with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could sit down, you could have a beverage with them, you could chat with them. It was totally different. And I don't think in today's NHL that virtually anybody has that luxury of getting to know a player that well that you can answer, how do you think he's going to handle it? I just don't. And he's going to defer. His representation will say, like, if this goes into the start of the season, the first thing I would do if I were Auston Matthews is say, I'm not talking about this every day, guys. I am simply not. And I do. The first day I'd say, ask your questions today, because I am not saying another word about it after today. And that's the way I would handle it if I was unsigned and going into it. And, and I would assume that his representation would give him that advice, get it out of the way, and then just play hockey.
And for Tree Living, I mean, he's been through a very similar situation with Johnny Gaudreau, right? Where he had a unsigned star player and watched him walk out the door for nothing. I mean, is that a cautionary tale? Is that something you learn from? Is that something you just have to accept as a GM? How do you look at that, Poulin?
Well, to look at it, he's dealt with both cases. He had it happen twice. He had it happen with Johnny Gaudreau, who we did let go, and he tried valiantly to sign him right up to the final, second. I mean, there was substantial offers on the table, which I believe were more than he actually signed for elsewhere. And certainly he was the only one that could offer the additional year. But almost immediately when faced with it again with Matthew Tkachuk, he took the alternate route and said, I'm not dealing with this. I'm dealing with it with Gaudreau. I'm not dealing with it with a Tkachuk. I'm making the move and made a major trade. So he's been on both sides of it. So he would learn from his experience and say, I literally can't let happen what happened to Gaudreau, but how would I handle Tkachuk differently if I were given the same situation today? Mm-hmm. And we don't think that's happened with either Nylander or Matthews, or in that same manner where they said we're not going to sign. We haven't heard anything like that. So it's a little bit different, but that would be in the back of his mind. He's had both experiences.
I think that recent experience specifically is what made him such a clear-cut choice for this job.
Brendan, that is still, we're so magnified with what happened with Matthew Tkachuk this year in the playoffs and to the finals and all that they were within a game of not making the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And despite his excellent individual year, if they don't make the playoffs, that trade does not look anywhere near the same as it does today. And that was how close and how fine line it is. I still think Jonathan Huberdeau comes around. He was the one that had the biggest adjustment. He didn't ask to be traded. He was one of the top scorers in the NHL. He had his best friend in Barkov, who was also his money man on the ice. And all of a sudden he's sitting in Calgary. So he makes a decision to re-up there and has a hard time settling in, feels enormous pressure. Mackenzie Weegar, still is a very good top pairing defenseman. And you've got Cole Schwint, who was in that deal too, who, could prove to be a player. So we could sit here 3 years from now and say, well, that was a pretty good trade for Calgary.
30 seconds, Poulin, if you can. Looking at the other Canadian teams, exclude the Oilers and the Leafs. Who else is making the playoffs?
Oh, boy. Let me go really quickly in my mind here. I think the Ottawa Senators, I think they're going to do it. I do.
Ottawa?
I do. I follow them a lot. Winnipeg is going to be battling for it as well, but those are the two teams that I would say, and in different manners. Winnipeg almost holding on to a playoff spot, and Ottawa surging and coming through. All they have to do is start the year better, Brendan. You know, they've been fine from Christmas or American Thanksgiving on. They start the year better, they make the playoffs.
Dave, well said. I'm sorry that it's our first time on air together and I put you on the clock for 30 seconds, but great answer. And I really enjoyed this chat. I look forward to the next one, pal.
Yeah, so do I, guys. Have a great day. Have a strong finish to the summer.
Thank you. You too. Dave Poulin joining us on the Maple Toyota hotline. Build your next dream Toyota at Maple Toyota. Check out Maple Toyota's pre-owned inventory arriving daily. It's time to Toyota. Visit mapletoyota.com. That was great.
Yeah.
Good points, man. And you know what? I'm with him on the Jets and the Sens. I still think that Calgary's got a chance. I mean, I think they have more of a hill to climb than those other two. But, man, I think Ottawa's close. And I think the Jets are always there, even with their turmoil last year, even if they haven't sorted things out in the room. I just think they're more of a complete unit.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be, look, I could see the Jets doing it, but because you're right, they've been there before. They've done that.
Yeah, there's a familiarity.
Yeah. But, man, it's going to be a tough race. Like, if Pittsburgh, you look at the teams that didn't make the playoffs in the East last year, and it's Pittsburgh and Buffalo missed by a point. Pittsburgh's rejuvenated with the Karlsson trade. Buffalo, if they get decent goaltending, man, and those two stud defensemen and Tage Thompson up front and all the rest of these guys, like, they're a team on the rise. Detroit's got a chance to be a team on the rise, although I believe a lot less in them than I do in the Sabres.
Yeah.
So it's a crowded picture unless somebody comes out. Like, do you really, and I'm with Poulin. Like, people thinking that the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to come out of the playoff picture. I don't know, man. They outplayed the Leafs in round one, even though they didn't win. They're not going anywhere, in my view.
I mean, there's a lot of people that still think that the Bruins are, going to be in the playoffs. So you can't write the Lightning out.
The thing with the Bruins is, like, when you have 135 points, even if you have a 25-point drop, you're still in the playoffs, right? Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? They were that good. And I understand maybe when you lose the heart and soul in Bergeron and Krejci, specifically Bergeron more than anything, it's wild card. Like, it can go a lot of different ways when you lose the guy that's been the center of it all.
It's going to be a good season. Like, it's going to be an entertaining season.
There's a lot of great storylines.
There really is. And
like, how will Boston react to having those two guys retire? How will Tampa react to just being old dogs? And to Pooley's point, but old dogs who suddenly had a longer offseason than they've had in a long time. And then the Karlsson thing in Pittsburgh makes the ultimate old dog team suddenly more compelling. So that's a lot of fun.
But to Pooley's point about the Lightning, how we've come through now this condensed 3-season stint that's affected a lot of teams, some teams more than others. Like, now we're back to normal, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And so I think it's gonna result in a very, very entertaining season to watch. We're gonna hit some a good segment next. Unique, ridiculous, wild, unbelievable sporting records. We're hitting that on Overdrive on TSN 4, TSN 1050, and the iHeartRadio app. This is Overdrive, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. But I am not Hayes, Noodles, or the O-Dog. I am Brendan Dunlop. Very happy to be in this seat this week alongside Dave Feschuk today. Great hockey talk with Dave Poulin. I enjoyed that. Also got me thinking about that men's league game that I played at 10 o'clock that my legs are reminding me about as I sit locked in this chair this way. That's another thing, too. People told me, they're like, yeah, your body feels different. But I denied it.
Okay.
And now I have to be one of those post-game stretch guys. But I'm not good at that.
No.
I love you're just staring like,
I mean,
this guy's figuring out life.
Yeah. I mean, like,
Pooley, I was your age once.
You'll notice Pooley, who was an elite athlete, captain of the Philadelphia Flyers, won a Selke, one of the best defensive players of his era in the NHL. He only went on the ice for half an hour at Fantasy Camp.
Right.
He was coaching, right? Even though Pooley's in great shape, you got to be smart. You got to pick your spots.
So that's what you're saying. I need to choose how many sporting excursions I put my my frail body through.
Well, pick your spots, man. Go like I always follow the lead of the greats, man. I don't try and if they're picking their spots, and I was not one of them as an athlete. Maybe I should pick my spots even more selectively.
Oh, that's a good point. I think I'm sour and I'm sore because the summer league season ended.
Yeah.
We lost. It was a must-win playoff game, and we lost, so it's season's done.
Any fights?
Summer's over.
Any
Yeah.
fights?
Always.
That's the thing. That's why I don't play men's league sports anymore.
Luckily, I haven't been in the mix of that. That can be the case sometimes where that happens in soccer. I get stomped on a lot.
Do you?
Kicked in, and there's a part of me that thinks, well, it's just because I'm wearing brightly colored boots, but not like the pink or yellow ones.
What do you wear?
I've got like these nice blue Adidas that got like yellow spots on them.
All right, blue with yellow spots.
Yeah, they're kind of like they look like claws. It's a bit much. To be honest, I'd probably kick myself.
I was going to say I might take a run at you just for that.
To be honest, yeah. I'm just an honest guy, though. I understand. I understand that in some people's eyes that puts a target on, but
If you like them,
they're good boots, man.
if you like them, it's like guys that wear white skates or yellow laces. They, for some reason, it just sets people off.
What about guys that wear white gloves? I got a guy on my team, tinted visor, never puts the mouth guard in correctly. Right? He's always got it hanging out like Steph Curry. White gloves. He's always got his jersey up so you can see his forearms.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan.
Take a slash that skin.
There you go.
Right?
Take it easy, Mikey.
Like,
take it easy.
Put some wristbands on or something because I'm coming after you.
One thing that I was excited about last night when I saw this, because I think a lot of people realized that the Ravens hadn't lost in 24 straight preseason games. It got me thinking about other very unique, weird, unbreakable, or embarrassing stats.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of them, right? When someone tells you that Cal Ripken played 2,632 straight games, if you lived it, you know the Iron Man, you're like, yeah. But if you'd say that to anyone who's not a baseball fan and knows it's a 162-game season, or any athlete, another discipline, when you tell someone that like played professional rugby in Australia that Cal Ripken did that sounds insane.
It does.
It sounds fake.
Especially in today's era, right? Like we've grown up now, or we've come to accept now that you shouldn't play every day. You'd be crazy to play every day. You'll hurt yourself. We got to load manage you. We got to be careful here.
Yeah.
Bubble wrap these guys. Make sure you make it through and be valuable for your team in the playoffs. But Cal Ripken never thought like that.
No.
It's just like it's a totally new way of thinking. And my thing about it is I think we're going to see a backlash more and more because, and I talk to, people that are in the medical side of things of pro sports quite a bit. And the problem they're facing here is they understand load management. And Alex McKechnie and the sports science guys at the Toronto Raptors got Kawhi Leonard through that season with load management, coined the term, basically started this whole thing in a lot of ways.
Made it a thing.
Made it popular.
Multi-sport.
Made it acceptable, and of course made it championship proven.
Right.
Which gives it the double stamp of approval and a golden stamp of approval. Problem is, from what I'm hearing and from the data that you look at, it's not stopping guys from getting hurt.
Right.
Injury rates in the NBA, especially if we're talking about the NBA, they were high this year.
Mm-hmm.
Really high, historically high. And so if resting guys isn't stopping them from getting hurt, why don't you just play them? Because guess what? That's what they're getting paid to do.
I mean, there's that. When it comes to the NBA, though, I do still think there's a fine line between the balance between how many games should they play in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
I really think the sweet spot is 65. I think it makes for more competitive basketball. I think you're going to have more guys on the floor. You're going to have less load management. It just wouldn't be a thing like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Maybe that would reduce the injuries. We're all talking about the total load, right? It's just a given. Like, oh, they're already in this shape. Just put them out there another week in the NFL. What's one more week? It takes an immeasurable toll, and I just think that basketball is the one example where I think it feels obvious that switch would have big ripple effect. But of course, it's on the bottom.
You're saying change the schedule. You're saying reduce.
I'm saying they should reduce the regular season in the NBA to 65 games. Makes a better product. You're going to have more players on the court. You're going to. I would think you'd have less injuries. But as you just said, load management is statistically proven that it's there's very few examples in which it's actually worked. The main one being the first one.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. Like I think the worry there, NBA owners probably won't go for it. We've talked about this ad nauseum. Like, that's a lot of revenue you're throwing out the window for what, right? And the question is, what value would they get in return? You're saying they would get a better product, right? And with more players available, but there's also the possibility they would get a situation where, the season's 65 games, I'm playing 50.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's kind of
Possible.
become the standard now. Like that's what's become acceptable for players to say, yeah, count me out of this, and this, because I'm not playing back-to-backs, I'm not playing this, I'm not playing that. It's a problem.
Yeah.
Blame the Raptors.
Yeah, it's a situation, honestly, the reduction of the schedule, particularly in the NBA, is a situation that would only happen when you have a pandemic or something like that. They're not having that money. Not with the new TV
point.
deal. They're not having that conversation. Somehow we got to this conversation talking about unique sports records on the NBA. Like the Celtics winning 8 straight titles, different era, but you're not going to see that again, right? Gretzky, 51 straight games with a point.
Oh, what a streak.
There's some players that we've thought could do it.
Yeah, Jason Robinson was rolling at that, or Mitch Marner too, right?
Yeah, Mitch Marner was on that. Maybe that is one that's breakable.
I don't know, man.
It just feels to me as unreachable as an Ironman streak. There's so many factors at play. Just playing 51 straight games is impressive.
Yeah.
Right?
It's incredible. I mean, there's so many Gretzky records that are incredible. The one with Gretzky that gets me is like 1,963 assists.
Yeah.
Guess what? Nobody else in the history of hockey has 1,963 points. Think about that.
I know. It sounds fake. It does.
It does sound fake.
Barry Bonds was walked 120 times in one season, intentionally. One
Remember that?
season.
Remember that? Like that was just like must watch TV. Barry Bonds at bats.
Yeah, it was wild.
He was such a machine.
Most teams don't have face 120 intentional walks.
He was such a machine. Man, what a player.
I got to go soccer for you. Jose Mourinho didn't lose at home for Chelsea in like 9 seasons.
How is that even possible?
Nuts. No, it was actually, excuse me, it's 9 calendar years.
Okay.
There was a departure stint there where he was he'd gone away.
Did he get fired at some point and get rehired?
He got fired and rehired and then fired again. Yeah.
Right.
The Chelsea era.
Crazy.
Jose Mourinho, man. That was a wild time.
Stamford Bridge was a tough place to play.
Yeah, they'd like to think
Great
it's
stadium.
a tough place again. It is a pretty special stadium. It's part of the reason why LA Dodgers owner Todd Bowley paid $4.5 billion in a very bizarre situation where Roman Abramovich was forced to sell because of the war and because of what turned on Russian billionaires.
Yeah.
And yet Todd Bowley has raised the market price for everything, everywhere.
Wow.
Because of that. Paid $4 billion, man.
Think about that.
The Saudis bought Newcastle, different scenario, and there's property involved, and it's West London. Like there was going to be more zeros at the end of this. But $4 billion when Newcastle went for 350 million pounds the year before to a much richer entity, that doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
And now it's driven everything up. Now Manchester United is talking about being sold for $8 billion.
Wow.
And it trickles everywhere, right? It affects, for those of you listening, like, this guy's on a soccer rant again. It affects everything. You don't think that franchise price has some impact on even NHL prices? Of course it does. You're talking about a global, in that global sports marketplace, even if the league isn't actually global, it affects it, man.
Well, yeah, exactly. So does the Saudis coming in and just spending ridiculous amounts on everything, right? Buying golfers for way more than they should be buying them. Essentially buying golf for who knows how much they're going to buy it for, because there's still a lot of murkiness around what that deal is going to mean for golf. But, man, you're right. It's great. Hey, Larry Tannenbaum, speaking of local billionaires, Larry Tannenbaum was trying to get in on that Chelsea deal too, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. MLSC had flirted with a couple of soccer ideas. Remember Leeds United a few years ago when they were down in the the league championship?
And that's why, that's an interesting whole different conversation about why the fact that they don't have a CEO right now. They got an interim CEO, but they don't have an expansionist CEO like Tim Leiweke, right?
Right.
And there are those saying around that building, the Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment building, that shouldn't we be in the market for expansion here? Like Fenway Sports Group's doing it. Like the big conglomerates are buying global stuff now. It's not just about your little corner of Bay and Lakeshore, right? It's about owning global assets as a company like Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, and yet, to my knowledge, they don't own anything off these shores.
Off the shores, they've flirted with a couple of deals, but no, they've not closed it. This in sports investment fact sounds weird or sounds unique or made up. LeBron James bought into Liverpool with the Fenway Sports Group.
Right.
I forget what the year it was, but I think he'd just gone to Miami, maybe, and it was $6 million was his investment. That's now worth $90 million.
Nice.
Not a bad return for LeBron James. On unique sports records, he'd be embarrassed about this, Brett Favre, but 336 interceptions. One of the most talked about greatest quarterbacks, of his era, and that number seems insane. The Lions.
And by the way, Hayes would be offended that you brought that up.
Would he?
That's his all-time favorite guy.
This is why they vary the host. You get a differentiation.
That's right.
Yeah, a diversification of topics.
That's right.
I don't think
take some shots at the Packers.
No, I want to take some shots at the Packers. I'll take one more soccer shot. Ronaldo has scored more goals since turning 30 than Wayne Rooney his entire career. That sounds fake.
That sounds kind of fake.
That's real. That's it.
But mind you, man, what a specimen Ronaldo is. And the one that kills me though, like we're talking about load management. The one that I like, maybe my all-time most amazing stat in sports. Will Chamberlain, the year he averaged 50 points a game. That's impressive. 50 points a game, pretty impressive. That's the year he scored 100 points in a game.
Yeah.
He averaged 48 and a half minutes a game, more than regulation, because he played all 48, I think, in almost every game. I think there was one game he didn't. And, of course, he played 53 overtime, like 53 minutes, 48 plus a 5-minute overtime in many games.
Yeah.
And averaged 48 and a half.
That's nuts.
Like, guess what? It can be done.
Yeah.
I think we've changed the standard. We've lowered the bar. Guys are still getting hurt, but guess what? They're taking days off because they can.
Wow. And that's the argument they're rolling out where anyone that says we got to shorten the NBA schedule. Look what Wilt did. These guys can figure it out. Just give them some time.
He was superhuman,
science.
sadly. That's the problem. Wilt was a superhuman. Everybody else was mere mortals. So it was maybe a little bit of a different picture.
Yeah, I get that. Well, we got more to get to on this picture. This is Overdrive on TSN 4, TSN Radio 1050, and the iHeartRadio app. We've had some good topics to go through, Dave Feschuk, and there's a couple of topics where I can't help but wonder what Hayes Noodles and O would say. Usually it's O. When it comes to Lionel Messi and what he's done in his time in America, 10 goals in 7 games, took the last place team in Major League Soccer and won them a trophy in their first opportunity in the Leagues Cup, which is all 29 MLS teams against the 18 top flight teams from Mexico. And it was two American teams in the final with a couple of Canadians. Kamal Miller, center back for Canada's national team, part of this Inter Miami revolution that Messi is a part of. It's been incredible for me to see people who aren't soccer fans at all and maybe thought, Messi's just going to run through it. He's making a mockery of the league, but get sucked into like, this is fun to watch. Like this guy is must-watch TV, which is exactly why he's here and why everybody involved with Major League Soccer made this deal happen.
Yeah. Well, it is an interesting case study. Like it's been incredible to watch. Like it's been a nightly like pleasure. Like you wake up in the morning, if you didn't watch the game, you're like, Messi scored again. You got to go search at the highlight. You got to watch the goal. You got to read about the gamblers who say the greatest bet in North American sports right now is the Messi anytime goal, right? Because it's 10 goals in 7 games. I mean, has he scored in every game, or has there been a game?
No, he scored in every game. He's only played 7 games. He hasn't played one MLS game yet. The MLS took a month-long break for this Leagues Cup.
Hasn't lost the game yet. 5 wins, 2 draws, right?
Did they draw though? I think they won all those games.
Did they win them all?
I think they won all. Now you got me thinking about the group stage of the Leagues Cup. No, they won all of those games.
Okay, whatever.
But it's been, that doesn't happen very often, and that never happened for that team into Miami.
Well, they were dead last.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I don't think most people realize.
They still are dead last.
They still are dead last in the league because they haven't played a league game.
They've got a busy schedule. They're going to make the playoffs. They've got some real ground to cover. But, man, I can't see anyone. I don't see them winning outright. but I can't see them going on a run where they lose 3 in a row again. That's not happening. And what might get in the way potentially is how many games they have to play, because they have a few games in hand. Their return to Major League Soccer was postponed because they were in the Leagues Cup final, and also they're back in action tomorrow night. Messi still won't play an MLS game, but tomorrow night he'll be in the U.S. Open Cup, which is the equivalent to our Canadian Championship, where Inter Miami, without him, got to the semifinals and faced FC Cincinnati, who are one of the best teams in MLS.
Right.
But they're going to want another trophy, man. Like, there's not a lot of opportunities in America to win silverware, and they've just done it at the first opportunity in a brand new competition. They're going to want to win this U.S. Open Cup as well.
Okay.
So
now let me ask you this: if there's my spidey senses are going off a little bit with this run from Messi, because last time I checked, he's in his waning days. Is this not maybe saying MLS ain't that great?
he's adapted, man. He's adapted his play. And look at him at the World Cup. He's got it in the tank, man.
Okay.
He's done it better now. He's not exerting himself the way he used to. He's picking his moments, and he's giving us magic.
So he's not discrediting this league.
No, we haven't seen him play in the league yet. That can
point.
be another conversation for another segment. This is Overdrive. You're watching on TSN, listening on TSN 1050 and the iHeartRadio app.